Perception of Sales podcast. And today, delighted to say we are joined by Keir Shave. Keir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it.
It is a pleasure. Looking forward to it as well, Keir. And to kick things off, just for the listeners, please tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Of course. So, as Kyle's just said, I'm Keir Shave. I own and set up a business called Parallel Partnerships. We're an outsourced sales and telemarketing business. So we traditionally help sort of business to business companies generate more opportunities. So it's our job to open doors for them, get them in front of relevant prospects, relevant companies to give them the chance to sell their product or service. So all of it's phone based, all of it's telephone based, and it's a real good environment over here.
Brilliant. Appreciate the introduction, Keir. And as we always like to start at the podcast, we like to go back to the very beginning of your sales career, because you've not always been a founder of your own business. So how and why did you get into sales in the first place?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique story, and it's a good one. So I'm looking forward to sort of talking it through further. The reason I originally got into sales is it's probably quite a typical response, and it is a bit of a cheesy response, but everyone around me used to always say I had the gift of the gab and that I would speak a lot. And traditionally, that is something that is always sort of seen as being quite important when it comes to sales jobs, because a lot of what you're doing is talking to people. It's all around conversation. It's all around getting people to like you and buy into the product or service that you're talking about. So I started a career in sales because of that reason. I originally started pretty low down in terms of sort of like an entry role. I was originally actually doing surveys. So it was my job to do hundreds of calls a day, speaking to people that had inquired with car dealerships. So they'd inquired maybe to buy a car or go through a finance agreement or even just get a service. And my job was to contact them and find out how their experience had been with said dealership. As you could probably imagine, doing hundreds of calls a day, you speak to a lot of different people of all different faces and worlds. And so it was a really nice way of getting into it, because it just broke that barrier immediately, and it just managed to get me to learn to speak to even more people than I'd ever thought I'd ever speak to in my entire life in a very quick time frame.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of those survey calls many a time. And keen to go into that journey a little bit more detail, but one thing that you mentioned and that kind of struck a chord and I thought was particularly relevant was the whole gift of the gab phrase and saying, because you're right, that's what people say, you've got the gift of the gab, you can talk, sell ice to the Eskimos, I think is a phrase that gets used quite a lot as well. How much do you think that has materialized now in your sales career in terms of how important that phrase or how true that phrase actually is?
Funnily enough, I actually think that statement is incorrect, and I think that the best salespeople are the people that actually speak the least and listen the most. And I don't know where that perception, if I'm honest, has actually come from. I think it's just because people traditionally think of sales as the typical, you've had a car crash type sales, or you've fallen over at work, or do you want to buy some windows and doors? And I think that type of sales, you probably do need to do a lot of talking to, unfortunately, scam people and trick people. And actual sales is the complete opposite. It's more a case of speaking to people, having a conversation and not a pitch, and shutting up, asking some good questions, getting them talking, because the more they're talking, the more they're going to give you in terms of information that will help you to continue that conversation, whichever form you want to continue it. So I actually disagree with that statement nowadays, and I think that the best people, especially the best people I hire, are the ones that do less talking and get the prospect talking. It's the most important thing. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. And that's why I'm glad we got that answer and asked the question, because we hear it so much. And I mean, what does the gift of the gab actually mean? But if you actually break it down, does it mean you talk too much? Does it mean actually you're just a really good communicator? I think when people say that, they probably mean it in a really complimentary term. So as long as you know when to listen, when to shut up, when to ask the right questions, and when it is your turn to communicate, you do it in such a way, then it's probably not a bad thing. But to suggest that great salespeople have the gift of the gab and just talk as much as possible is definitely incorrect in my opinion. And we'll come on to that a bit later as well.
No, I agree. And I think nowadays, again, traditionally salespeople are seen as like big extroverts that have got massive personalities, and don't get me wrong, that is important and it does help. But at the same time, some people that are maybe traditionally a bit quieter still have really, really successful careers and still incredible at sales, because they've got other qualities that sometimes extroverts don't have, aka that listening, that's got real strong effects when it comes to sales in general.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to find that they actually can perform better sometimes as well. The people are a bit more introverted, but keen to later on in the episode go through a bit more around that listening and doing less of the talking when we actually dissect cold calling specifically. But coming back to your journey, obviously started doing the surveys, and I believe from there you worked your way up at a business called Amvoc as well. So just tell us a little bit more about, I guess, that journey and what it was like from initially joining through to basically becoming a director or a head of.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, you're bang on. So I worked at that customer service or customer market research firm for about 6 to 8 months doing the surveys, and then I was approached by one of the managers there, and they asked me to start doing business development for the company because they'd seen my work ethic and they'd seen the successes I had. So they asked me if I wanted to do business development, which meant that my job had stopped being completing the surveys, but it was actually to contact dealerships themselves to find dealerships that were interested in potentially using us to do surveys to find out gaps in their sort of process. So a very different role. It's what, in my opinion, really started my actual sales journey. Because doing surveys, you are calling people that have inquired. It's not a sell or a challenging sell. It's more a case of just having a nice conversation with them. Whereas business development, it is a more traditional selling role, and so that's what started me off in the sales world. I'd worked there for about 8 months to a year in that role. I did really enjoy it. It was a great company to work for. However, what I found was it was only myself and one other person that were doing that role over the phone, and sometimes if you're in a room full of people that are tapping away on a computer and not doing a similar role in terms of sales, it can be quite hard because everyone else looks like they're not really doing anything. They were doing work, clearly they were all working, but when you're on the phone, you've got to have a level of enthusiasm, a level of passion, and yeah, when you're one of two people that's doing that in a quite quiet office, it's it can be a little challenging. So I moved on to Ventures New, and I actually joined a company called Amvoc, Kyle, like you just mentioned there, which were actually based across the road from that company. They were literally across the road. I joined as my best friend at the time worked there, so I thought it would be a nice place to join, familiar faces. And they were an outsourced telemarketing company, very similar to Parallel, which I own now. And so I joined there, again, entry-level role. My job was to again, generate appointments, but across a variety of different campaigns. And that's where my career really took off, was within Amvoc. And I did work there for 6-7 years, and it's a very unique story / end, which I'll explain hopefully later in the podcast. But yeah, my main and sort of first step within sales was that business development role at the Judge Service, they were called, which was the car dealership review company.
Well, I think a good transition and very interesting that the business you joined was literally over the road as well. But it's good that you had a friend there. So thoughts are, natural transition, understand why you probably made the move as well, because it's difficult doing a sales role when you're one of only two people in a business doing it. Feel like all eyes are on you and everyone's listening in. It's probably not the case, but that's what it feels like. And coming on to Amvoc, you obviously your career trajectory was impressive there, and I think it's 4 or 5 years you were there. I know a lot of people, have worked at Amvoc over the years. Not everyone will get promoted into that head of or director role. So what were you doing that was maybe different to everyone else?
Of course. So, in my opinion, the reason that I moved as quick as I did from this sort of starting role all the way up to ending to become actually a director for the firm was work ethic. And I think that is one of the most important things when it comes to sales. Skill and talent is of course important, and that will come with time and with training provided by colleagues, managers, and so on. But if someone's not willing to work hard and put in the graft and learn the trade and learn the skill, because it's not easy as sales. It's really rewarding and it's really entertaining and it's a great career, but it's not easy for people. It's not something I don't think everyone can do without the right level of support and work ethic. My aim on every single call was to try and get as much from the opportunities as I could, even if it wasn't an appointment or even if it wasn't a sale. It was to get a new name, find out who is the actual correct person to speak to, when they are available, why they're not interested, and just gather as much information as I could, because the more information you have in sales, the better you're going to do, and the more practice you have, again, the better you will do. So I would say it was my work ethic, but also the results. I sort of became obsessed with it. I was watching videos online, I was doing training, I was going to events, and so I was developing myself too, which meant that within the role I could excel quicker than my peers who potentially weren't doing the same level of sort of passion or the same level of work ethic. My journey was, traditionally I started on the phones in the B2B department. So B2B is where you're calling a business to discuss them a product or a service. And so I was working for a variety of different clients. I think one of the proudest things I can say is I've sold pretty much everything and anything. To give you a crazy and weird example, I worked in a campaign where I was booking appointments for a bamboo coffin manufacturer. We were calling funeral makers. I know it's an awful topic, but one of the key issues with a funeral maker is the size of their sort of shops and the size of their locations. They're traditionally quite small. And so big wooden coffins, they take up loads of space. And awful to say, but you don't know how many you're going to need in a month. Whereas these bamboo coffins, they were packable and they were almost like IKEA DIY. So you could fit considerably more in a smaller space, meaning that however many you needed over the month, you always had the amount. They smelled awful. The client actually came in and showed us them and put them up, and they didn't smell great, but they fixed an issue, and that is the key thing in sales, is fixing an issue. So that's a really weird example.
Yeah, flat pack bamboo coffins. It doesn't really get much more obscure and unique than that. Give us some other examples, Keir. I'm interested to hear what weird and wonderful things you've sold.
Another weird example, it was a campaign that we did focusing on America and Australia, and it was for a manufacturer of chicken vaccinations. There's lots of awful diseases and viruses that go on in farms in America and Australia that affect livestock, aka chickens. And we worked with a big pharmaceutical firm that had developed this new vaccine, and our job was to contact farmers, establish what they had in place at the moment when it came to these vaccines, and again book a meeting for the client to sort of further discuss the opportunity. As you can imagine, calling from England into America and Australia about that to farmers was definitely unique.
Chicken vaccinations, that is definitely a little bit different for sure. Amvok then is obviously a very interesting part of your journey, because you did exceptionally well there. Obviously progressed into a non-shareholder director position in a really short period of time. And before we go on to the next step at Parallel and how that's come about, I'm just particularly interested into what you were saying earlier around hard work. You said what made you get to that position was your hard work. You became obsessed with the numbers, which a lot of great salespeople do. And why was it, without this being like a really deep interview here, interviewing you for a job, why was it, or what was the motivation or your reason why you were working harder or doing more maybe than other people?
It's a selfish reason, and stems down to two things. A, money. I've always been someone that wants to have a load of money. I want to have nice cars. I'm obsessed with cars. I change them all the time. It's another bad habit of mine. But I wanted money. I wanted opportunity, and I've also, and again, it's potentially a bad habit, but I've got a tiny bit of an ego, and I don't like to be beaten by people, and so I never wanted to be the bottom of the call board. I never wanted to be the lowest scorer. I didn't want to be the one that hadn't got the first appointment and so on. And so, selfish reasons, but I wanted to do well from an ego perspective, and I also wanted to do well so that I could have a good career and earn a load of cash. And that is one of the really strong pulls into sales, is you have the opportunity to earn what you put into it. And it's very unlike a lot of roles where you're sort of capped by a salary. Within sales, traditionally, you're not capped on a salary. You can earn more, and the more you put in, eventually the more you'll get out.
Appreciate the candidness and honesty there as well, because I know a lot of people in sales are probably lying if they say they don't have a little bit of an ego. Do you think now your role has changed and you're obviously responsible for a lot of people within the business? Do you think your motivators or drivers have maybe changed a little bit over the years?
Yeah, I would more so say now that it's more a case of development is my key focus. I want to have a business that is sustainable without me and that is successful, because I think that sales is incredible, and I think that a lot of companies struggle with sales, and so that's why what we do is so important, because we take away that headache from companies having to have sales teams. They can use us. We've got the environment, we've got the team, we've got the experience, and it gets rid of that headache. So currently my main focus, don't get me wrong, is still to have a successful business that earns money. But at the same time, if I can create opportunities for my people here that work really hard, aka some of my managers, senior managers, to have a similar career to what I had, which has stemmed into such a beautiful opportunity for me here, that I think that that's a win too. And so, yeah, my focus is getting the right people into the right positions that creates us all a really good opportunity to be successful. And successful is different for each person. You know, like I said, for me, it is more sort of ego based and finance based, but for some people, success is that they just want to prove to people that they can do well. And so my job now as CEO of Parallel is to find out what does motivate each person, and I can't assume that what motivates me and motivates them. And so if I can create a world where we all get what we want, well, then that's a win in my eyes.
Love it. And now we're kind of starting to talk about Parallel. Let's talk about, I guess, the big topic and subject of today, because for people listening to this, they might just say, oh, Keir's, set up and founded a business, Parallel Partnerships. So that's great. Loads of people go on to set up their own business. How Parallel Partnerships came about certainly has a bit of an interesting backstory. So rather than me trying to summarize, please, Keir, for the listeners, give us the detail of how Parallel was actually born.
Yeah, you're bang on, Kyle. Parallel was born in a very unique and special way for myself and for a lot of the team here. So to give you the full backstory, it actually starts beginning of March 2023, 14th of March to be specific. So I was still working at Amvoc. At that point, we had 3 offices, just under 300 staff. We were across loads of different sectors and verticals, and I was at that point the non-sharing director of business development. And on the 14th of March at 10 o'clock at night, we all got an email, and that's what started everything. We got an email that said that unfortunately the company had gone into administration due to issues with COVID debt and HMRC debt and things sort of catching up, which was really shocking. It was awful, to be fair. I had members of my team calling me, asking me if it was true, and asking if it was a prank or something had gone wrong with the emails. And my response was, I know the exact same as you. I didn't know anything more than anyone else. I hadn't had any pre-warning or prior sort of understanding of the situation. Don't get me wrong, I knew we had sort of COVID debts and finances there. Every business did, unfortunately. But yeah, it was extremely shocking to get that email, and I never thought that day would really come. So yeah, at 10 o'clock, we got that email. I had all sorts of calls. I had people crying to me. I had the lot, and it was a weird couple of hours, to say the least. Because prior to that, the company had still been expanding. We'd still been hiring people. We'd still been doing everything as usual. It had been business as usual. So it was definitely a weird moment. And just before I explain sort of what came into that, I I actually have some sympathy for the actual owner of Amvoc, and I believe that the stress that he must have been going through prior to having to send out that email must have been insane. You know, he'd set that business up 12, 13 years ago. He'd grown it into a really substantial, successful business, and it must have been really hard for him to have to do that as well. And so, don't get me wrong, for us, it was really shocking and it was upsetting. And, you know, some people were annoyed, which I get. You know, it's never the right way to do it, is to send an email out at 10 o'clock and do that. But at the same time, he clearly wouldn't have wanted that to have happened either. So I do have a level of sympathy. You know, I think he could have done it better, yes. But yeah, the level of sympathy is definitely still there now as a business owner myself. But yeah, so that was 10 o'clock. That was the email. I promise you it gets a bit more exciting from here, but I think it's important you get the backstory. I was then awake until I think about 4:30, 5:30 a.m. that night, because I saw it as a massive opportunity. As soon as I read that email, I thought, don't get me wrong, yes, it's shocking and upsetting, but at the same time, I'd worked so hard for so many years to develop some brilliant relationships, not only with clients that I'd brought in over my time at Amvoc, but also with members of my team, you know, some of which I'd worked with for years at that point. And so I saw it as a chance. And going back to what I said earlier in the sort of the conversation, just do it is my most important motto when it comes to setting up a business. And I could have at that point tried to get a job, and I would have got a decent job, you know, I had a good amount of experience. But I saw it as a chance. I had clients available and I had really good experienced members of the team available. So I thought immediately, let's try it. Let's set up a business. You know, it was what I knew in and out. I was doing so much at Amvoc that I knew I could make it a success. So by about 4:35 a.m, I'd set up parallel partnerships. We'd registered on Companies House. I bought the domains. I'd set everything up from that perspective, because I knew that in a short time frame, I could create jobs and an opportunity for myself and for my members of the team. So yeah, it was up till 4:30, 5:30 doing some of the boring admin in terms of setting up a business. And I named it Parallel within about 30, 40 minutes, because, and this is rare for me, I'm not, in my opinion, the most creative person. So coming up with a logo or a company name is not something I'd naturally be very good at, but it just came to me. And it's really cheesy, but we're an outsourced sales company, so we work with companies. So the reason I called it Parallel Partnerships is because we want to work in parallel with their team and in terms of their sales teams and their teams in general. So I thought it was fitting, and they both begin with P, so it looked nice as well. So yeah, I was up till about 5:30 a.m. that night, setting everything up, talking to teams, talking to members of my team, talking to employees, sort of letting them know what I thought I was going to do, seeing who bought in. And I was really lucky to get a lot of buy-in from members of my team. They'd seen what we'd been able to do under Amvoc, and they just thought that this was another opportunity to do the same, if not better, through a different company. So I was really lucky to have a lot of my experienced team members buy into working with me and sort of believed in my vision. But yeah, I was very tired the next morning.
I can completely imagine, and what a story, by the way. Like, what a story! And I'm right in thinking there were still people that turned up the next day to the office that obviously weren't aware or didn't see the email, just to a big sign on the door, basically saying that yeah, you can't be here.
There was a sign on the door, so we had 3 offices. There were signs on all 3 of the doors, and that was it. You know, some people were starting the day after, so they'd quit their jobs and had planned to start a new company and in a new role. And again, they obviously hadn't even had the email, because we wouldn't have had their emails on file at that point. So yeah, they'll have had the exact same sort of shocked feeling as yeah, a load of people stuck outside a building, now without roles, unfortunately.
Such a shame, but again, I kind of appreciate your honesty in saying you felt for the owner of the business as well. I'm kind of with you. They must have been going through a lot. Probably should and could have been done better for sure. But that they wouldn't have wanted it to happen as well. And the the kind of hours then and days and weeks that followed, but particularly those hours up until 5:30 in the morning, you'd had a very successful career. You obviously understood the business very well, but working in a business is completely different than setting up your own company. So talk me through kind of what actually happened in those hours. So 30 minutes in, we came up with the name, Parallel Partnerships. But what were kind of like the steps that you actually took, or the plan that you put together in that time frame?
Of course. So my plan immediately was staff and clients. I knew that the back end stuff in terms of setting up a company, making a website, doing the finances, the accounts, everything like that is, in my opinion, relatively simple in terms of you can just learn that side of things. But getting good clients and getting good staff is always the hardest part for a business, in my opinion. So my initial thought straight away was secure both of those things. So I drafted emails immediately that I was going to send out to all clients immediately at 9 a.m. the next morning, letting them know what had happened, because again, my assumption was that they were going to be kept out of the loop. I can't imagine that they were a priority at the time to the business owner. So I thought I'd straight away alarm them and sort of let them know what had happened to Amvoc, but at the same time let them know what my plans were, because I knew I had really good relationships with them and that they probably weren't going to care where the invoice was going to, as long as it was the same people, aka me and the team, and the service level wasn't going to drop / if anything increase. And so yeah, first thing I did was draft the emails. Obviously I still had access to all my emails and so on because they were on my personal phone and so on. So I drafted that, ready to send out as soon as I could in the morning. That was one of the key priorities. And then the second priority was, my team, making sure that people were aware of what I was doing, making sure people were okay as well, because again, some people had worked there the same time, if not longer than me. And so again, I knew what they were going through. So my key two focuses were both clients and staff, and making sure that both were aware of what I was doing. I then planned meetings with every single client that I thought was a good fit for what I was going to produce under Parallel within that week. I also booked some viewings as well on that night. So I booked viewings for office places because, again, I don't, in my opinion, really like the whole remote working, hybrid working when it comes to sales roles, which again, maybe we'll cover in a bit, but I knew I'd need an office of some kind. So I looked into office space, and then set up the business on HMRC, bought the website domain, set up emails, because again, I wanted it to look credible, especially to to the clients that I was going to speak to, because yes, they bought into me, yes, they bought into the service and the staff, but at the same time, some of them are really big companies, and if you email them on a Gmail and you're talking about this, that, and the other, it seems unrealistic. It doesn't seem like it'd be possible. So I wanted to show them that I actually meant what I was saying. And so, I set up all that back end too. And then just did some research and learned about the stuff that I didn't already know about, aka zero, your accounting, the boring stuff, I call it, that is very important to a business, but it's definitely not something I enjoy.
Yeah, what a great story. And that was 14th of March 2023, so
Yep.
not that long ago, really. What does Parallel Partnerships look like now?
So Parallel now is just under 40 staff strong. We've taken over more office space. We're about to hopefully move into either bigger space where we're currently at, or into a bigger sort of office elsewhere. And we now have some senior managers, some team leaders, so people have already had sort of movement within the company. And today, I think we're about 14, 15 months in, we have achieved multiple seven figures in terms of revenue. And so, we've expanded quickly, we've expanded well, but it's all about sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is much better than just standard sort of accelerated growth that's out of control. And so we're in a really, really good position. Luckily, I'm in a position now as well where I can do things like this, and I've got time to speak to people and not just be working 10 hours a day, doing absolutely everything. I've got people that are helping me with HR, people that are helping me with the finances, people are helping me with the things that A, I'm not great at, and B, I don't enjoy doing, and therefore, yeah, we're in a really, really good position, and I've got a lot of my existing team that's still working here that have come from Amvoc, and so our relationships are even stronger from both a personal and a working relationship. And we've grown a load of clients as well, and not just clients that came through. We do still have some of the clients that came through from Amvoc, but we've now got a team that's responsible for generating new business for us. And yeah, we're working with some incredible companies doing incredible things.
Brilliant. So, what, not even a year and a half, and you've gone from the email and the sign on the door to a business of 40 staff and, looking to grow further. I think what an incredible story. And what I like the most is, and everyone deals with things in different ways, to get that news of redundancy and losing your job is obviously a terrible thing to hear. But I think the way that you've dealt with it, you can't control what happens. You can just control how you deal with it. And I think within the space of hours setting up a business and where it is now, I think a lot of people can learn. Just generally in sales, they might not have a moment like that that's as big in their life, but just whenever something doesn't go your way, it's all about how you react. And I think there's a lot of good lessons there to be learned.
Exactly, and I actually think that that's the be all end all of sales as well. Even if it isn't a big moment like this, even if you're just cold calling for a business and the call doesn't go as well as you want it to, you get rejected, you get told to go away, it doesn't work out. That's it. That's it's done. There's nothing you can change about that. Just move on to the next one. See it as a learning opportunity and see it as an opportunity. And that is what I saw. It was awful, and don't get me wrong. I didn't see myself probably leaving Ambot. Really, I was doing well there, the business was doing well, but it's a silver lining, and you've got to look at that on every level of sales and every level of your life. Really, is look for the silver linings.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Some great stuff to be kind of learned and taken from that particular story. And you mentioned at the beginning there was obviously things, the boring stuff that you have to consider when you start a business. What are the things that now, 13, 14 months on, that you wish you knew, back in March 2023 with regards to setting up your own company?
Best answer to that is you can't do it all. I clearly, as guys can all probably tell at this point, I'm very passionate about what I do and passionate about sales. And for a long period of time, I was trying to do everything. And you can't do that. The way that you will succeed in life is by allowing other people to do things that they're better than you at, and allow them to do that. I saw Parallel as my baby, and it still is my baby, and I still love it to death. But I have now put people in positions that means that they can do really well at things that mean that I don't have to do it, meaning that I can work on the business rather than just working in the business. For a long period of time, I'd probably class myself as a self-employed rather than a business owner. And now I think I'm in a good position where I am owning a business, and I can look more at the future of the business and the growth of the business rather than trying to juggle 101 different tasks that in theory should have actually been done by 5 people. So yeah, more giving away of control, I think is very important to me now.
Which is tough for a lot of people, actually. And not even starting a business, but if you go into management and you have to, give responsibility away, it is difficult. But I think it's good advice. You can't do it all, and it's good, to pass that responsibility on to others. Want to move on now to, I guess, what Parallel does and just in generally what your career has been built on. And when you delivered your introduction at the beginning of the episode, you kind of emphasized the fact that it's telemarketing and it's all phone based. And I got the impression you made that point specifically to say, we're not email, we're not this, we're not social media. So but just generally, really broad question, what are your thoughts on cold calling?
I think cold calling is the most important proactive way of marketing business. Yes, I am 100% biased, but it will never be replaced. And maybe a good conversation we can have in a bit is about AI and all that side of things. But I don't think the days of picking up a phone, speaking to people could be replaced or could be done better by an email or by a social media ad or by that. Yes, there's pros and cons to both, but if you are speaking to someone, you're in their face in terms of you're there and that, having a conversation, you've got a much better chance of putting across your message in a better manner. Yes, it's challenging. It's not easy. Not everyone can immediately do really well at it, but you need to be speaking to people because people buy from people. And again, I know it's a cheesy motto, but they do. And the best way of proving that you're a good person, having a good conversation with someone, is via just speaking to people. And so I think that telemarketing and phone call sales will never be replaced, will never go, and I think is so important because all the skills you learn from picking up a phone and speaking to people and getting rejected and having your successes and having that dopamine hit will help you no matter what you are doing in life. So yeah, I think telemarketing is the most important way of proactively generating business or opportunities, because yeah, you just can't beat speaking to people.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll come on to the AI piece now, actually, now you've mentioned it and brought it up, because I don't believe this, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here. There might be someone that, at another business, selling a piece of software, whatever it may be, that might hear what you've just said and said, well, no, Keir, we could easily get an AI robot to do an introduction and elevator pitch, to ask some relatively simple, qualifying questions. We could easily get a robot to do that and replicate, some of the people you've got in the business doing it. What would your counter argument be to that, or what would you say to that person?
Just do it. No, I'm joking. I think AI will always have a place in sales. I don't think it's anywhere near where people think it is currently when it comes to sales. But I think that AI will be used in sales, but I don't think it will replace the human. I think that humans will always be required, especially in telemarketing, because yes, you can replicate how people sound. Yes, you can replicate sales techniques, but sales isn't a persuasion game. It's not about persuading people and changing people's minds. It's about making them realize that they have the need and have the issue. And so it's not about sales technique. It's not about persuading people. And I think that AI can be used to help salespeople, as in I think that they'll probably get to a point where AI is getting past receptionists and getting past gatekeepers, but then I think it might then pass you through to your person. So you might have Keir as the salesperson, and then Keir might have an AI bot that's doing the legwork, the grunt work, getting past these receptionists, getting past these gatekeepers, and then once they're through to the decision maker, Keir takes over. The Keir bot sounds identical to Keir, so there's no issue, but I think that that's where it could be utilised, because people will always be better at conveying a good message and having a good conversation and being a human-like conversation. But maybe AI could do the legwork, meaning that humans are having better and more increased number, should I say, of better conversations a day. But I just can't imagine it can replace a human, because a human touch can't be replicated.
I completely agree, and this is an example that probably demonstrates the point even more. But this is in written format and live chat and chatbots. I get so frustrated when you just can't get to the point, and to the point where I just start typing "agent, please," because sometimes that overrides a chatbot, and you speak to a human. Yeah, and that's on text. That's when it's easier to replicate human behavior, never mind on a cold call. So, yeah, my thoughts are the same. It's incredibly frustrating. I can't see it going anywhere anytime soon. But
It's tone as well, because again, if you're having a conversation, someone might say a phrase and 10 people could say the same phrase. It's how they say the phrase that matters. And so I can't imagine that AI is going to be able to work out people's tones and then base it on. I just don't see it doing that. And like you said, it's so annoying already. Yes, technology will hopefully advance and means that those live chats aren't as annoying, but I do the same when I'm calling people and I've got a switchboard. I won't listen to answers. I'll just go agent, 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 and hopefully just navigate my way through. I don't see it replacing complex or even simple telephone sales. Maybe I think it's got a space in maybe telephone sort of customer service and maybe text customer service if it advances, but I still think there's a requirement for human touch there.
yeah, agreed. There used to be a tip. I'm not sure if they've cottoned onto it now, but if you were calling up, I don't know, your broadband provider or phone provider, and you have to key in this, press 1. There used to be a trick where if you just type 0, I think it was over 10 times really quickly, it would just override it and go straight through. So if anyone's getting frustrated on those switchboards, feel free to give that a try. You might get through to a human a little bit quicker.
It's funny you say that. That is what I tell a lot of my guys as well when we're doing cold calls, because sometimes you will be calling businesses that have got switchboards. And so my thing is just click one. Don't bother wasting your time listening. Just click a button, because even if you don't go, and we will talk more about cold calling a bit, but even if you don't go through to reception, for example, who you might think you need initially, if anything, that's actually better, because receptionists are trained to get rid of cold callers. Whereas if you click one and it's actually finance aren't probably trained to get rid of you. And so they might actually give you more information or put you through to who you do need. So I just tell them, click one and just get through it quicker. Speak to someone. Don't bother wasting your time messing around with them switchboards.
Yeah, could be there all day. And coming on to cold calling, then it's obviously something you've done a lot. You've essentially built your career and business on cold calling. Without cold calling, your business doesn't exist. So, what are your thoughts? And I guess what do you tell your team on maybe the best practice or things that people should adhere to and do when they are making the volume of cold calls you'll be making a day?
The key thing is learn from what you're doing. When someone starts either a new campaign with a new client or is a new starter to my business, they always get provided a script and training on what to say and what to cover in terms of the company, the service, or just sales in general. But the people that do best in sales in general, and especially here, are the people that experiment with that. It's what works for me might not work for you. For example, Kyle, it might not work for my new starter. It might not work for anyone else. So it's all about taking what you've learned and taking what you do understand from the training, finding what fits with you and changing. Try different intros, try different pitches, try saying things in different manners, try different tones. And yeah, A and B, or A and B and C and D and E test everything until you find out what works for you. Because again, like we've said, sales is all about being a human and being personal and so on. And so it's all about testing different things until you find a fit. And there isn't 100% a fit for everyone in terms of, no salesperson in the world gets 100% hit rate. You will get rejection even after years of doing it. I still get rejection. I don't close everyone I speak to, but it's all about learning from that. Okay, I didn't close this person or I didn't book this meeting. Why? Find out why and change. Try something different and be adaptive because the world is changing every second, as we all know, and sales is changing just as fast.
And you mentioned, to touch on what you said there with, change, adapt, be different. I might be putting you on the spot a little bit here, Keir, but we mentioned earlier the funeral makers or coffee makers and also the farmers in the US and Australia. If I was to say now you've got two cold calls to make, let's say they would both answer as well for argument's sake. The first one is a coffee maker, the second one is a farmer. How would you approach those two calls and what would be the kind of differences between the two?
So the coffin maker I'll start with that one, you are calling a more professional business. Yes, a funeral maker is still not a massive corporation. Traditionally, a lot of the smaller ones aren't. But you've got to be, in my opinion, more professional than you would with a farmer. With the farmer one, the key thing was just talk to them as if you're talking to your mate at the pub. Lots of mates, how you doing? Lots of just general informal chat, because they are the people that you would bump into at the pub. And so that is the best way of doing it, because you just want to be as chatty and as maybe as informal, I guess, as you need to be, because again, people buy from people, and the best way in sales is to mirror the person. If they are really chatty and really informal, be the same. They're not going to want to sit another meeting with your client, or they're not going to want to buy your product if they don't like you. And be honest and open with them about what you're doing as well. Never try, and to be fair, this is the same with everything we do, but never try and hide away or shy away from what you're doing. You are, at the end of the day, calling them to sell them something in some form. So never try and shy away from that. Always be upfront and honest about what you're doing. There's no point trying to hide away from it because it'll just bring up that barrier. But yeah, definitely be a bit more chatty and a bit more matey with someone like a farmer or a mechanic or anything along those lines. When it came to the coffin one, a lot of our approaches are around helping people, even introverts, people that maybe don't think they do. Everyone has a bit of an ego or a bit of a belief that they're good at what they do. And so if you can approach them, ask for their help, people are willing 9 times out of 10 to help someone. So we traditionally always go and sort of asking if they can help you or point you in a better direction of who to speak to about XYZ. In that case, it was about coffins. So, about your bamboo coffins. So yeah, asking them for help is always a good sort of intro because people like helping people normally.
Cool. So I think the key things there really is mirroring, trying to relate and adapt to the types of people that you'd be selling to. The coffin one still amazes me. Just getting yourself up for selling that. I think I'd actually be really up for the challenge. In fairness, it definitely sounds a bit interesting.
It was really successful because, like I said, their key issue is space, and so this is a product they've probably not heard of because, again, I hadn't heard of it. I don't think you have, Kyle, and so it's got that factor of it being unique and it's got that factor of it being something new. So, we were offering for the client to go down and show them and do them a demo and, talk through the product. So even on that front, it's something that people just wanted to look at. And then their key issue was space and it helped save that issue. So yeah, really, it was a really successful one, but it is definitely a unique product.
But I think there's a good learn from that though, because we naturally doing our job speak to people all of the time that are looking for new positions, are looking for their first position, and a lot of the time people get maybe the wool pull over their eyes with really flash product, but actually if I was going for a sales position, I'd be looking what problem and how big of a problem does this solve? And it might not be the most flash product, software, whatever it may be in the world, but like you said there, as long as there's a genuine problem that it solves, you will probably perform better. And I actually think there's a good message from that, but it's still a bit unique.
It is indeed. And just on that, yeah, I agree. People want to get into tech sales or they want to get into something that might seem, sexy, but I think everyone should at one point in their life, and as early as they can, in my opinion, work in a call centre. Now, I know that might seem to some people as this awful thing, working in a call centre, but it's really not. And you learn so much. It's something, you just bring up your resilience, you bring up your own motivation. And again, even if you don't want to be a salesperson, you should want to be a salesperson, but even if you don't, then all that resilience, all that self-belief, that motivation, that work ethic will help you no matter what you do. So I think everyone at some point, and especially early on in their career, should work in a call centre because you learn so much.
Echo that for sure. And we're coming up to the end, Keir, and one final thing I just wanted to touch on really. We've spoken a lot about parallel partnerships, obviously the inception to where you are now, which is incredible, 13, 14 months on. What does the future look like for you and the business?
Future for Parallel is really exciting. We're looking to expand again sustainably. We're currently sitting at just under 40 staff. We want to get to 60, 70. My ideal end goal for Parallel is to get to about 100 staff. I don't really want to be much bigger than that. I think that with the level of staff there and the right team in terms of senior management team, it's a really sustainable and really good place for people to work and grow their careers. So yeah, my plan is to expand in terms of people. I really want to get into the customer service world as well. We currently work with a few clients, sort of inbound call handling and so on, but I think customer service is something that, especially with this AI that we spoke about, is going to start requiring more and more humans, as companies expand. And so, yeah, I want to get into some of the big players in the customer service world. We've joked about trying to navigate to an agent with some of these big switchboards, but we want to be the agents you get through to, and we want to be the people that are helping people with their problems. So yeah, sustainable growth, grow the team, develop the team, and just keep working in partnership with people.
Brilliant. And looks like it could be a great journey ahead. Look forward to following it. final point I think will be a really good place to finish the episode on really is, as you know, we're looking to change the perception of sales, and either for people that work in it to be proud that they do, or for people not sure what to do to go into sales. You said probably about 2 minutes ago that sales is great. Why would you recommend anyone listening to this to either be proud or definitely consider going into sales as a career?
So the considering point I'll answer first. I think the reason you should consider sales is because you will need sales in everything you do. And so it is the most important skill, and people don't teach sales, unfortunately, at unis or in school or anything. And I think that it's something that really builds your character. You learn loads and you can use it no matter what you do in life. And when it comes to people being proud of sales, that's the key thing that, in my opinion, people really like about sales is you can be proud of it. You know, if you've just hit the new company record, if you've just had a really good day, if you've booked your first meeting, if you've closed your first client, that is something to be proud of. And you are given commission, you're given extra bonus because of that proud achievement. So not only do you have the sort of emotional feeling of being proud about it, but you've also got the financial sort of achievement of doing well. And if you buy a holiday, if you buy a new car, if you buy a new t-shirt, that is a constant sort of gratification and a constant way of showing that you've done a good job at something. And that is hard to get in a lot of other roles. So yeah, anyone that's listening, sales is incredible, and you should 100% consider it, and you should 100% be proud of what you do, because it's so important in life.
Keir, what a way to end. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Kyle, it's been a pleasure too. Really glad to be here, and I hope we do well.
Cheers. All the best.
See you later.